An amazing discovery, a broken Apache woman revealed in his home, transforming their lives forever. Tom wiped the rain from his brow as he stepped into the musty attic of his grandfather's ranch. He had come seeking old tools, remnants of a trade that once brought him joy, but instead, he stumbled upon an unexpected sight. Huddled in the shadows, the broken form of an injured Apache woman named Kaya stirred. The storm raged outside, mirroring the chaos in Tom's mind. His instinct screamed to flee, yet his heart twisted with a sense of urgency. A woman in need. Could he really turn her away? With hesitance and a messy swirl of confusion, Tom took a step closer. As he reached out, panic flared within him. The very real reminder of his responsibilities as a single father overwhelmed every thought. He could barely manage the bills, raise his son, and maintain his contracting business. "You don't take on extra burdens," a voice in his head warned, especially not when he struggled to keep his own life afloat. Still, he couldn't leave her there, vulnerable in the dark. "You're safe now," he whispered, his voice steadying like the first few rays of sun piercing through the rain clouds. Yet, as he guided Kaya out of the attic, doubt crept in. Would she reciprocate their shared roof with kindness, or would her presence become yet another heavy weight? His boss wouldn't care about the compassion he felt. He would only see a risky distraction from contracts that barely paid. The thought coiled in his gut, tightening as he tried to calculate how far he could extend his already stretched boundaries. Would Kaya's illness complicate his life, or somehow enrich it? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every passing day, as Tom tended to Kaya's wounds, an unexpected energy surged through him. Her stories, laced with the wisdom of her heritage, began to awaken the fire in his heart. A fire long extinguished by monotonous tasks like building fences and fixing porches. His woodworking skills were capable of so much more. But with this rekindled passion came the gnawing anxiety that resurfaced whenever he envisioned the contempt of the townsfolk, particularly from his boss and lifelong neighbors. What would they say if they found out about Kaya, the woman they deemed a threat? Each whispered rumor and scornful glance weighed heavy on Tom's shoulders, drowning him in trepidation. Max, his son, was a constant source of conflict. Initially resentful of Kaya's indelible mark on their lives, he roamed the halls like a restless spirit, pushing away the warmth she tried to project. Tom experienced a stab of pain every time he saw the distance grow between them. His son, who should be burgeoning with dreams, now felt trapped between two worlds. Was it worth it? Torn between the safety of normalcy and the exhilarating risk of something radical, Tom's thoughts spiraled. The fear of disapproval loomed large, but in the quiet moments shared with Kaya and Max, he recognized the flicker of hope igniting, a bond that could transcend their struggles. Just as he decided to confront these tensions openly, a new incident shattered their fragile balance. In the heat of a growing storm, one of the town's most prejudiced leaders sowed discontent, igniting fury among the townsfolk. The air crackled with malevolence, and Tom felt it suffocating him, rendering him powerless. Would he become a man who stood for justice and integrity, as his grandfather would have? Or would he falter, bowing to the immense pressure closing in? In this moment of chaos, the choice lay bare before him, to protect their newfound connection, or to succumb to fear and make himself small. The thunder rumbled like fate calling, and Tom's heart raced as he felt the noose tightening. Would he follow the path of courage, or let this potential connection slip away, like water through his calloused hands? As the winds howled, tension thickened, leaving their fates teetering on the brink of what was to come. Tom stood amidst the howling winds, doubt and determination swirling in his chest like the storm outside. The town's outraged voices echoed in his mind, but he needed to focus on Kaya, on Max, on the life they were building, albeit with uncertainty. His soul felt like it was splitting, torn between a desperate need for acceptance and a vivid urge to embrace the unfamiliar. The tension thrumming in the air urged him toward a crucial choice. protect what was precious or retreat back into his familiar but suffocating life. He took a deep breath, let the storm's wailing cleanse his mind, and locked eyes with Kaya. Her gaze, weary but defiant, ignited something dormant within him, a calm that pierced through the chaos. This was no longer just a dilemma about social standing. It was about humanity, about standing tall against injustice. The anxiety that had held him captive began to loosen its grip, replaced instead by an intention to forge ahead. That evening, Tom gathered his courage and stepped outside, where the rain had finally eased into a gentle drizzle. The glances from neighbors would flutter like leaves in the wind, but he wouldn't let them stifle his awakening. He approached Mrs. Cummings, the leader of the muckrakers, his heart pounding with a fierce fire. "This isn't right," he challenged, the words spilling forth, surprising him with their clarity. "What's not right, Tom? Wanting to protect our town?" she shot back, her voice dripping with disdain. "It's wrong to scapegoat Kaya. She's not a threat. Look at what she's endured. Isn't our humanity more important than your fear?" He felt almost dizzy with what he had unleashed. The townsfolk swung their gazes toward him, some in disbelief, others with simmering resentment. In response, the crowd murmured, a mixture of uncertainty and anger swirling like the remnants of a tempest. But for Tom, it was empowering. The words felt right, ringing true, as if announcing a newfound resolve. His heart raced not only from fear, but now a burgeoning sense of possibility. He had been fearful of rejection, of judgment, but now he felt a potent mix of liberation and clarity. He was willing to fight for Kaya, for Max, for the very life he had once accepted without question. That night, he returned home, a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions still tumbling within. Max was asleep, his small body nestled against the covers that Kaya had mended, reflecting her gentle strength. Tom sat quietly, the night stretching before him like an unfurling canvas. Plans began to take shape, a way to integrate Kaya's rich culture into their lives, to foster an understanding, a bridge against misunderstanding that could quell the rising tide of hostility. But in this burgeoning hope, Tom felt a sharp twist of uncertainty. How would he face his boss? His livelihood depended on the very people who might turn against him because of his choices. Breaching that threshold would require an unyielding commitment to his values, an alignment of his professional life with his emerging moral compass. Would he risk everything he had built for this newfound sense of purpose, for a fragile bond that flourished against the odds? As dawn painted the horizon with the softest hues, Tom knew a confrontation was imminent. Soon it would be time to stand before his boss and the judgment of the community. The weight of anxiety settled heavily on his shoulders. Could he uphold his integrity when the consequences might unravel his world? With resolve hardening within him, Tom stared out the window, watching the first rays of sunlight break through, illuminating the path forward. A new storm loomed, not of rain but of confrontation, and he would soon have to face its fierce winds. The stakes had never been higher. His journey was just beginning, and he felt the chaotic pull of transformation urging him onward. Would he emerge fortified or falter beneath the pressure? The answer hung delicately in the air, as uncertain as the mist that still lingered in the dawnlight. Tom stood in the kitchen, the sunlight filtering through the window and landing on the table where he had shared countless meals with Kaya and Max. The warmth felt like an uncertain promise, yet each moment clung to him with an urgency to act. He knew that his next encounter with his boss would be pivotal, not just for his own career, but for the fragile space he had created for Kaya in his life. Every fiber of his being urged him to prepare, but doubt lingered like a shadow at the edge of his vision. He had always been a people-pleaser, molded by years of conforming to expectations, but Tom felt a transformation brewing deep within, setting him on a collision course with his past. The thrill of speaking out against Mrs. Cummings and the stark realization that he had chosen Kaya's side was exhilarating, but the thought of losing everything he had built, all the respect he had gained, loomed like a specter. He could no longer ignore the question burning in his mind. Who was he becoming? As he stood there, thoughts spiraled around the confrontation to come. An internal battle raged, pitting desire against fear. What if I lose my job? His mind echoed. What if they turn their backs on me? Yet simultaneously, a resolute voice countered, What if I do nothing? What if I let injustice prevail? The pressures of his profession had often overshadowed the simpler truths, the moments with Max playing in his room, the easy laughter shared with Kaya over dinner. They challenged the constructs of his old life, fragments of joy rekindling inner strength he thought was long extinguished. With a deep breath, Tom grabbed a piece of paper and began to outline his thoughts, aiming to clarify not only what he would say but why it mattered so deeply. It was a new form of preparation. This time, it was for his conviction, rather than the opinions of others. Each word he penned became an anchor against the turbulent waves of uncertainty, threatening to sweep him away. But as he wrote, he also began to confront the fragments of himself he had buried under layers of expectation. What would his father have said if he knew his son had stood up for someone like Kaya? Doubt clawed at him, urging him to edit his words, to soften his stance. But was that even the man he wanted to be anymore? With each sentence, his courage solidified, and he found clarity in declaring that understanding and empathy were priorities he would not barter for acceptance. Outside, the town buzzed with unrest, and Tom could imagine Mrs. Cummings rallying her followers, crafting narratives that painted his newfound alliance as treasonous. As he formulated his speech, Tom realized he could approach the confrontation honestly, rooted in the truth of his experience with Kaya and Max. He envisioned himself standing in front of his boss, feeling emboldened rather than intimidated. The thought sparked an unexpected realization. He had relevant experience and knowledge from his prior interactions with Kaya's culture that could illuminate the town's misconceptions. He could share stories of humanity, struggle, and resilience, demonstrating how they mirrored the values the town held dear. The more he contemplated the encounter, the more his discomfort transformed into purpose. He was no longer simply defending Kaya. He was articulating a vision for a broader acceptance of diversity, an invitation to expand their understanding of community. Just as an element of hope began to settle over him, a knock on the door jolted Tom back to the present, jolting his thoughts. He hesitated, alarm shooting through him. The unexpected interruption might hold either support or confrontation. Breath seized in his chest as he approached the door. What voice awaited him on the other side? Would it challenge his tenacity or reaffirm his instincts? With shaking hands, he turned the knob, feeling the weight of destiny shift beneath him. And as the door creaked open, Tom braced himself for the most pivotal moment yet. What awaited him might change everything he thought he knew about courage and acceptance. Tom swung open the door, heart racing as he faced an unexpected sight. There stood Elena, their new neighbor, tears glistening in her eyes. Before he could say a word, she stepped inside, brushing past him as if propelled by a force greater than her own. Her presence was unsettling, charged with an energy that resonated with the uncertainty brewing within him. "Tom, I need your help," she said, her voice a mix of determination and fear. The fragility of her demeanor struck him deeply. He had barely known her, yet in this moment he understood the weight she carried. Without a second thought, he ushered her to the kitchen, urging her to sit at the table where countless discussions about dreams and struggles had unfolded over meals with Kaya and Max. "What's wrong?" he asked, genuine concern flooding his voice as he took a seat across from her. Elena's breath hitched as she spoke. "I overheard some men talking in town. They're organizing something, and they want to target families like yours." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, as if they'd plunged him into icy waters. The implications settled like lead in his stomach. "They think they can tear us apart, that we won't stand together." Outrage and fear warred within him, while clarity narrowed his focus. This was not just about his confrontation with his boss. It was about something bigger, an assault on the fabric of their community. Thoughts collided in his mind. Was he equipped to face this new threat? Could he truly defend what he had begun to cherish? "Do you know what they're planning?" he pressed, desperate to glean any details that might prepare him for the inevitable storm. "They've been planting seeds of fear," Elena confessed. "They think we're outsiders, that we don't belong here." A tremor laced her voice, but Tom recognized the fierce spark of resilience igniting her spirit. She might be vulnerable, but she was not broken. In that moment, Tom felt a shift inside him. Armed with the knowledge of his own experiences standing up for Kaya and the journey he had taken over the previous days, A flicker of determination ignited. "We can't let them divide us," he asserted, conviction pouring from his words. "I need you to help me organize a response. We need to come together and show them the truth of who we are." Elena's eyes widened, and for an instant he could see hope flicker within her. As they started to draft plans, Tom's mind raced ahead. He could mobilize not just for his own family, but for everyone who had been marginalized, everyone who felt they had no voice. Each idea he shared powered their conversation, breathing life into his thoughts and transforming his fear into collective resolve. This was more than about standing up for Kaya. It became a manifesto for their existence, a deeper commitment to a cause he had never imagined he would embrace. But as he spoke, doubt still lingered. Could he leverage the same courage he had found for this confrontation in the face of a community crisis? He would not only have to confront his boss, but the very fabric of the town's ideology. A personal crusade evolved as he pushed forward, crafting a message that would unite rather than divide. As they exchanged ideas, Tom sensed the distance closing between them. In their shared determination, he understood that he was no longer alone in this fight. The stakes had shifted. The confrontation ahead would not just be for one person, but for every individual who had felt marginalized or unheard. But the monumental task loomed before them like a dark cloud, and with each passing moment, the weight of what lay ahead became almost suffocating. The town was restless, and he could almost hear the murmur of a gathering storm preparing to unleash its fury. The moment of truth was approaching. Would he have the strength to not only defend his beliefs, but also galvanize a charge towards unity in the face of adversity? As the weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders, he took a deep breath, feeling the urgency of the moment pulse through him. With renewed conviction, he looked at Elena, ready to solidify their plans. But deep down, a chilling realization struck him. Some battles were fought not just in public, but within. Would this be the moment that defined his transformation once and for all? As determination bubbled within him, one question loomed large. Could he stand tall against the tide of fear and become the leader his community needed? Tom sat at the kitchen table, staring at the blank notepad before him. The outlines of their plan began to form, but every stroke of the pen was met with an avalanche of doubt. He had always been a quiet observer, content to stand on the fringes of challenges, merely hoping someone else would take the lead. Now, with Elena across from him, her resolve igniting something in him, he felt the weight of the world as it pressed down on his shoulders. The realization that the stakes were higher than he had ever anticipated shook him. He was no longer just fighting for himself or his immediate family. This confrontation could carve a new identity, not only for himself but potentially for everyone in their community. But could he really dive into a fight he knew nothing about? A battle seemingly larger than his capacity? "Tom," Elena said, breaking his reverie, "what if we start by reaching out to the others? Maybe a community meeting? We need to make our voices heard." Her eyes sparkled with fervor, yet Tom could sense the underlying fear that mirrored his own. "Sure," he replied, but his voice faltered. Could he gather the courage to speak in front of a crowd? Bouncing back to the meeting only added to his anxiety. Years of being the passive participant flooded back. He had sworn to change that, but this felt monumental. "Listen, I know it's a lot, but we can do this. You have a way of making people understand things. I saw it when you talked about your family." Her encouragement was a lifeline, pulling him from the depths of his doubts. "Maybe," he murmured, but the nagging self-doubt curled tightly around his heart. He thought of his boss's dismissive words and the condescension he had faced every day. What if the town viewed him in the same light? An imposter, an outsider, just like they thought of others. "Maybe it's time you show them," Elena urged, her conviction rippling through the space between them. "You believe in something greater than fear. That has to mean something." Her words hung in the air, a challenge softly wrapped in support. Tom pondered. Was the time to transform merely one of action, or was it also about shedding the skin of his insecurities? As they tallied up the families they could reach, a realization struck him. He had been so focused on his inner turmoil that he hadn't filled up the courage tank that was required for this new life. The past days of standing up for Kaya had chipped away at his fear, giving him glimmers of strength he hadn't acknowledged. It was time to embrace those strengths. "We should write down what we feel," he suggested suddenly, the idea igniting an unexpected fire within. "Let's capture those stories, each family's experience, what they've faced. We can present them in the meeting, illustrate the truth of who we are. We're not a threat." Eleanor's eyes widened, and together they flushed the pages with stories of struggle, hope, and dreams residing within families like his. Yet a slithering worry still curled at the corners of his mind. If they presented their truth, could it galvanize a revolution of thought, or would it instead throw a spotlight onto their already marked identities? Each word they drafted felt heavy yet liberating, digging into his psyche and calling for a release of fears he had tightly packed away. As they settled down, writing and sharing, Tom began to sense the change. With each revealing story, he felt like a puzzle piece snapping into a larger picture that encompassed authentic voices. This was no longer just about combating fear or hatred, it was a declaration of their existence. But just as clarity settled, his phone buzzed with a message from a local news outlet. "Would you be available for an interview regarding community issues?" Tom's heart raced. Were they ready to spill their narrative to the world? The looming fear crept back, casting shadows over their hard-won determination. Could he truly share the hard truths? Would he step into the role of a spokesperson for not just himself, but every person who had ever felt their voice was swallowed? As he exchanged glances with Elena, another question haunted him. Was he really prepared to face the backlash that might follow his newfound voice? The moment of doubt lingered, insistent and unnerving, waiting to see if he could rise. Now, with the possibility of exposure drawing ever closer, his thoughts twisted, weaving uncertainty into determination. Would this be the defining moment that charted the course of change for himself and those he cared about? As Tom sat silently, the glaring light of his phone felt almost accusatory against the room's dim ambiance. The request for an interview loomed like an unearthed specter, ready to haunt him if he didn't confront it head-on. His mind raced in turmoil, each thought tangling with his previous hesitations. Could this be a pivotal moment, or would it only be a continued pattern of self-doubt? "Tom?" Elena's voice cut through his haze, pulling him momentarily back to the present. "What are you thinking?" "I need a moment," he stammered, gripping the phone tightly as if it were a ticket to the unknown. It struck him that what they were about to embark upon transcended mere personal narrative. It echoed the cries of many unheard. This was not just his story, but a collective experience. Yet the thought of unraveling those experiences publicly sent ripples of uncertainty crashing through him. "What if they don't understand us?" he finally uttered, letting his trepidation surface. Elena leaned forward, offering a steady gaze filled with empathy. "What if they do? This isn't just about fear, it's about authenticity. You have to trust that your voice has worth. You've been holding it inside for too long." Her words pushed at the walls he had built around himself. Each affirmation served as a gentle nudge toward that acknowledgement of strength he yearned to embrace. He had so often viewed his voice as inconsequential, a whisper in a cacophony. But might this actually be his chance to break through? Reflecting on this, he felt defensive about contradicting Elena. She believed in their mission, and for the first time, a glimmer of internal rebellion emerged. Perhaps he wasn't just a passive spectator. "Okay," he said finally, drawing a deep breath. "I'll do it. I want to share our stories, our truths." As they both gathered their thoughts, Tom began to feel a sense of agency coiling within him, like a spring ready to unleash energy he had long kept dormant. Writing down their experiences morphed from being a burdensome task into a source of empowerment. They would not only voice their struggles, but also encapsulate their triumphs against adversity. The more they delved into their drafts, the clearer their narrative crystallized. It became evident that their fight wasn't just against the societal stigma they faced, but also against the personal battles they had navigated alone. Each story carried weight, not merely as testimony, but as testimony to resilience cultivated over the years. Yet the reality of sharing this with outsiders remained daunting. In expressing their vulnerabilities, would they invite scrutiny that might pierce their newfound self-assertion? Tom felt his fingers tense as he penned a particular line about his daughter, Kaya. the emotions swelling within him juxtaposed beautifully against the fear of potential backlash. Perhaps shedding light on the realities families like his faced could incite compassion. Something pricked at the edges of hope. After working late into the night, jackets tossed aside, papers now scattered across the living room floor, they finally settled on a format that captured their truth beautifully. But it wasn't just about what they wrote. It was how they expressed it, how they positioned themselves in the narrative. This would be the moment he would reclaim his identity and transform from the observer to an engaged participant. But as the sun began to rise, filling the room with a golden hue, a new thought settled heavily in his mind. What weight would this have? Would he handle the consequences of baring his soul? Even Elena's unwavering support wouldn't shield him from potential fallout. So, as he prepared to call the news outlet, he paused, realizing the true challenge lay not in the act of speaking, but in confronting their shared vulnerability head-on. As he dialed the number, adrenaline coursed through his veins, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Would this shift finally allow him to stand tall in a world that had tried to keep him down? And what embers of conflict would spark as they stepped into the limelight? With each ring, his heart hammered louder, the urgency of the moment amplifying. There was no turning back now. This was a leap into the unknown, and he had to hold on to every bit of conviction he had found along the way. Would their truth resonate, or would it open a Pandora's box of scrutiny? The answer awaited, and it felt electrifyingly close. The phone rang twice more before a voice on the other end answered. It was a smooth, professional tone, one that made Tom's heart race with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. He introduced himself, his voice trembling slightly as he laid out the intentions behind the call, sharing a story that could ignite awareness and understanding. Each word felt significant, and with every syllable, an invisible barrier began to crumble. "Thank you for contacting us," the voice replied. "We're always looking for impactful narratives. Can you give me an overview?" Tom's heart thudded in his chest. This was it, the moment of truth that would either unfold into a journey of expression or tighten the grip of fear once more. He glanced at Elena, who nodded encouragingly, her eyes glistening with hope. In that instant, Tom realized that this narrative wasn't just about him. It transcended his personal struggles, destined to resonate with others who felt lost in silence. As he detailed their story, however, uncertainty clawed at him. He spoke of the challenges faced, the stigmas endured, and the desire to move beyond mere survival. Yet, it was when he steered the conversation towards dense, raw truths, his fears about raising Kaya in a world that often ridiculed difference, that he suddenly faltered. Did he truly have the strength to reveal such vulnerable facets of his life? He could hear the shift in the receiver's breath, the introspective pause as they processed his words. "Your story is powerful, Tom. But have you thought about what consequences sharing this might lead to? Public exposure has its risks." The inquiry lingered in the air, coiling around Tom's resolve. What if the exposure birthed backlash instead of understanding? Would his daughter endure the weight of scrutiny for his bravery? The internal wrestling was fierce, each question laced with the specter of his past, moments of judgment and isolation flickering at the edges of his mind. "I know it sounds risky," Tom managed, his voice cracking momentarily, "but if we don't share, who will understand? If our stories can foster even a fraction of empathy, wouldn't that be worth it?" He sensed Elena encroaching on his side, tightening her grip on his shoulder. Her encouragement poured into him like a bomb, igniting his resolve yet again. Maybe it was about time to peel back the layers, to transform vulnerability into strength as they unveiled their truths. The conversation continued, rich with emotional density, drawing from the depths of fear and hope that ran parallel in their lives. By the end of their discussion, Tom felt different. A strange sense of clarity washed over him, as if he had shed shackles he hadn't even realized he wore. His fear transformed into a catalyst for change, not just for himself, but also for others willing to listen. After the call ended, silence enveloped them. The air was thick with unspoken sentiments, each of them comprehending the weight of what lay ahead. The narrative had morphed from a simple recounting of struggles into a deliberate act of defiance against the world's indifference. "Do you feel ready?" Elena's question cut through the silence, though it mirrored Tom's own thoughts. He didn't have a clear answer, but something surged in him, a flicker that felt almost like a spark of newfound courage. "I think so," he replied, though doubt still lingered like a shadow. Each confrontation with his insecurities pushed him closer to an edge he had avoided for far too long. But then came a pivotal realization. Confronting the vulnerability would ultimately strengthen him. He caught Elena's eye, a mutual understanding passing between them. She didn't need to say a word. They both knew they were on the brink of doing something extraordinary. As he moved to gather the scattered pages, to refine their narrative one last time, something unexpected struck him. The story was not merely about them, it was a narrative without a defined ending. What if they could not only expose their struggles but also reveal pathways to healing that could resonate with many? The foundation of their truth felt deeper than he had first understood. A discovery was waiting, not just of his voice, but of the universal connections his tale could forge. The prospect was daunting, but within it lay the potential for something transformative. Just as those thoughts began to solidify, the weight of new apprehensions gripped him. What about those who might actively oppose their truth? Faces from his past flickered in reflection. It was another layer of confrontation looming ahead, one he had yet to prepare for. He paused, staring at the very words that had once felt suffocating, now emboldened with fresh meaning. What revelations awaited as they ventured deeper into this journey of authenticity? Tom resolved to not only face the unfolding narrative, but embrace the battle of public perception that threatened to become part of their tale. As he took a deep breath, a new determination enveloped him. For the first time, the uncertainty felt less like a dark void and more like a pivotal moment waiting to be met head-on. The real question now loomed large. What would happen when the world encountered their truth? And more importantly, could they handle the repercussions intertwined within it? Tom sat at the table, papers strewn in front of him, but his mind was grappling with swirling thoughts, each competing for attention. The call had catalyzed a shift within him, a fusion of fear and conviction that felt utterly foreign. It was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. What struck him most was not just the weight of their story, but the potential this story held in the hands of others. Would opening himself up allow others to feel less isolated? Yet the duality of transparency simmered in his thoughts. He understood profoundly what it meant to expose yourself, to lay bare your experiences before an unforgiving world. Torn between vulnerability and the instinct to protect himself and Kaya, he felt the stakes rising. Elena returned to the kitchen with a cup of tea, her presence grounding him. "You're deep in thought," she said softly, sitting down across from him. "I can't shake the feeling that we're on the edge of something monumental, yet terrifying," he said, voice low. "I keep thinking about the people who may react negatively, who might want to tear this story apart." Her eyes softened, but there was a fierce glimmer in them as well. "But those reactions don't define us, Tom. They only highlight the importance of what we're doing. Sharing isn't just about us, it's about those who feel alone in their battles." He watched her take a sip and felt a rush of pride surge within. Her unwavering belief in their mission steadied him somewhat. "It's true," he conceded. "But what if I've misjudged the impact? What if the backlash is too much for us to handle?" "Then we'll face it together," she asserted, leaning forward. "You're not alone in this, remember? We've been through so much already. It's time to step into the light, not hide from it." Her words resonated, peeling away layers of anxiety. A thought brewed in the back of his mind. Might she be right about his fears being a reflection of his past rather than an accurate depiction of the present? He thought of Kaya, his heart constricted momentarily. Would she ever suffer for following the light he sought to bask in? Would his decisions strip away her innocence? Yet wasn't shielding her from truths also a form of silencing, of allowing stigma to thrive? The tension in his chest eased slightly, and he realized this conflict mirrored a pivotal moment in all growth. Would he allow the shadow of doubt to dictate his path, or would he rise against it? With renewed resolve, he began collecting the disheveled papers, moving with a sense of purpose. He wanted the world to see not just their struggles but their triumphs, how they rose from the ashes of stigma stronger, more authentic. They could illuminate a path, one that embraced both hardship and healing. His laptop chimed to life, and he pulled up a blank document. typing became almost cathartic as each word flowed steadily, packing the weight of heartbreak and hope into concise sentences. The pages began to fill, his fears noted as well, raw and unfiltered, making room for potential explanations and narratives. The act of writing felt empowering, the potential energy of transformation surging through him. As he went on, though, an unexpected wave of uncertainty rolled in as he reached the section detailing the struggle for acceptance, both societal and self-made. He paused, heart racing. Capable or not, would he truly be ready for the full scope of the journey? Just then, a message notification popped up on his phone. It was from the contacts he had reached out to, the organization interested in their story. His heart raced again. An invitation to meet for a follow-up brought on a flurry of questions. Eleanor leaned closer, her curiosity piqued. What does it say? The invitation ignited a mix of excitement and dread within him. This would not be merely a discussion, it would thrust them into the spotlight, an opportunity that could propel them forward or expose them to a world of judgment. As possibilities swirled, Tom took a deep breath, his throat dry. Meet soon, he whispered, a mix of implications settling over him. The time had come to face the complex labyrinth of public perception, to not only share their story, but to confront the vulnerability embedded in their truth. He needed to ask himself, could he handle the scrutiny? As he prepared to respond, the specter of opposition loomed in his mind like an uninvited guest at the forefront of his thoughts. What deeper conflicts would arise as they moved forward into a world that may not be ready for the truths they were about to uncover? The anticipation pushed adrenaline through him, fueling a fiery determination. The time indeed had come to face what lay ahead, but the real questions simmered beneath the surface. Were they ready for the repercussions that might ensue? Tom's focus sharpened as he read the message again, feeling the weight of the words settle heavily on his chest. The meeting was imminent, and along with the potential growth it represented, a myriad of unanswerable questions loomed over him. As he glanced at his reflection in the kitchen window, the frets of his past resurfaced, each one whispering warnings, urging him to reconsider. Eleanor's hand on his arm broke the spell. "Are you okay?" she asked, concern knitting her brows. "Yeah, just thinking about what's next," Tom replied, his voice steadier than his heart. "This meeting may open new doors for us, but it could also lead to scrutiny we're not ready for." "Or it could illuminate paths we never imagined," she countered gently. "This is more than just our story. Think of all the people who might see themselves in our experiences. What if we could help them find their voice?" Her words hung in the air, challenging him to shift his perspective. Tom turned his gaze back to the screen. He hesitated, fingers poised above the keyboard. The last thing he wanted was to retreat into silence, forsaking the very message he sought to share. But the weight of his fears clung tightly to him, urging him back into the shadows of caution. The clock on the wall ticked, counting down the moments until their conversation with the organization. Each tick felt like a judgment, timing him, reminding him that he was on the brink of something significant. He recalled his commitment to include Kaya in this journey, to show her the complexity of the world they were engaging with, protecting her innocence while also imparting wisdom. "Can I be honest about my fears?" he started tentatively, choosing the conversation thread deliberately. "Of course," Eleanor encouraged, her voice soothing like an anchor. "I fear that sharing our truth will open us up to criticism, judgment. I'm afraid it might hurt Kaya. What if the world isn't ready to understand?" "Then it's our job to help them understand," she countered, unflinching. "It's okay to be afraid, Tom. But remember, progress is often born from discomfort. We owe it to ourselves and to those waiting for someone to say, 'I see you.'" As her words seeped into his consciousness, something shifted within him. A realization blossomed in the midst of doubt. He understood that fear wasn't exclusive to him. It thrived in silence, in the unwillingness to act. Perhaps there was an awakening here, not just for him, but for others who might resonate with the raw honesty of his experience. Taking a deep breath, Tom opened the document on his laptop once again, fingers trembling with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. He began typing, focusing on the aspect of their journey that unfolded through struggle, the pain of seeking acceptance, the resilience that seemed to grow when faced with skepticism. Each word felt like a moment of liberation, a testament to his metamorphosis from fear to empowerment. He imagined the potential ripple effects of their story, the lives that might be touched, the souls who might find solace in understanding they weren't alone in this battle. With the narrative building momentum, though, frustration bubbled beneath the surface. He grappled with the boundaries between sharing and oversharing. What did full disclosure look like for them? Could it even be achieved without exposing their vulnerabilities for harsh judgment? His fingers faltered as they approached a deeper truth he hadn't fully acknowledged. His own journey of self-acceptance, the shame and guilt that clouded his past. Would reliving those moments serve as illumination, or just further complicate their path? The phone vibrated, breaking his contemplative state. A reminder for the meeting flashed on the screen. Tom looked over at Elena, who met his gaze with unwavering support. In her eyes, he saw acknowledgement of the collective struggle and hope, a partner ready to face whatever lay ahead. "Ready?" she asked, her tone light yet sincere. "Ready as I'll ever be," he replied, one last surge of determination coursing through him. As they stood up, the enormity of their decision settled between them, heavy but not unbearable. Tom understood that they were about to walk into a realm of both possibility and fear, a contradiction that held the key to their escape from silence. After all, the journey ahead wasn't just about sharing their narrative. It was about confronting the shadows within as well as around them. But in that moment of resolve, a single thought emerged, relentless and piercing. The very idea of walking into judgment, speaking their truth, and the ultimate challenge awaited. How would they cope if their stories spiraled into something they couldn't control? Tom sat on the edge of his bed, mind racing as the weight of the meeting settled heavily upon him. The air in the room felt thick with anticipation and anxiety. He glanced around at the familiar sights, the well-worn photographs of Max, the framed artwork from Kaya, reminders of how far they had come and the bonds they had forged against all odds. He stood up and paced, grappling with the enormity of what lay ahead. This meeting with the organization represented not just an opportunity for advocacy, but a defining moment in his journey. Could he truly stand tall, articulate their truth, and embrace vulnerability while risking everything? The moments of doubt coiled within him like a spring, ready to release at any moment. Would this be the point of no return? He pulled his phone from his pocket and reread the invitation. "Join us to discuss your story, how it can inspire others." The message stirred something within him, igniting a flicker of determination. He wasn't just speaking on behalf of himself, but was the voice for those surrounding him, Kaya, Max, and an entire community often silenced by fear and misunderstanding. After what felt like an eternity, Tom decided to share his internal conflict with Elena instead of letting it fester in isolation. She listened patiently, eyes filled with understanding. "There's so much I want to say, but what if my words aren't strong enough?" he admitted, voice tight with apprehension. Eleanor's gaze sharpened, and she leaned forward, embodying support and motivation. "Your words are powerful, Tom. It takes courage to speak your truth. Embracing the uncomfortable aspects of this journey is where authentic transformation occurs." Her belief echoed in his chest, igniting the fire he had buried beneath layers of self-doubt. If he could transcend his fears, perhaps others would find their own strength hidden within the shadows. Slowly, he could feel the weight lift. He was on the cusp of an evolution. After a few more minutes of discussion, they both gathered their belongings in a refreshed spirit, determination bubbling beneath the surface. The time had come to confront the world, showcasing not just their struggles but the resilience that had brought them thus far. As they drove toward the meeting, the weight of anticipation alternated with bursts of exhilaration. More than anything, Tom wanted to embody the hope they all craved in their journey. The city lights painted a backdrop of potential, inspiring a newfound confidence that reverberated through him. Upon arriving, Tom's heart raced, yet he stood tall as they entered the conference room. Welcoming smiles greeted them, and he could feel the air shift in that space, empty of judgment yet filled with eagerness for understanding. They sat at a long table, notebooks open, eyes drawn toward him as he began to share their story. With each word, he felt the tension in his shoulders dissipate. He detailed their struggles of acceptance and the warmth gained from connection amid isolation, Vivid anecdotes punctuated his narrative, and the room felt alive. The response was almost immediate. Questions arose, not fueled by condemnation, but curiosity and a genuine desire to learn. Each inquiry affirmed Tom's growing realization. His journey of vulnerability had sparked discussions around the table about empathy, acceptance, and the nuances of shared humanity. As the meeting progressed, a pivotal moment unfurled. Inspired by the conversation's pulse, Tom stood a little straighter, and he shared the vision he and Elena had crafted, to advocate not only for families like theirs, but to dismantle barriers of misunderstanding in the community. The adrenaline of the moment surged within him, and Tom conveyed the depth of the lived experience with clarity and conviction. In that room filled with understanding, he endeavored to foster connections, blazing a trail of newfound bravery. Hours passed like an instant, filled with engaged dialogue and emotional expression. The exchange was no longer about horror stories, it was a communal exploration of hope and solidarity. And at that moment, Tom realized something incredible. He was no longer shackled by fear. He had stepped into the light of possibility. The transformed man before others was a testament that courage evolves through shared vulnerability. A ripple effect of strength began to take root in that room. As the meeting came to a close, applause erupted. The acknowledgement of potential resonated within, transforming doubt into confidence. The world was still rife with challenges, yet Tom felt fortified, recognized for the steadfast heart he had nurtured through adversity. Driving home, the quiet hum of the engine soothed him, and a new sense of purpose washed over. He was not just an observer anymore. Tom had not only shared the truth of his experience but emerged a leader, fortified by understanding, representing a new chapter in his life and the lives of others. With genuine fulfillment settling within, he understood that he had conquered the greatest conflict, his own apprehension. As the familiar sight of home came into view, warmth enveloped him, a feeling of belonging that stretched wider than he had ever expected. Tom envisioned a future where acceptance soared, not just for himself or his family, but a community united by empathy. He had transformed, and now the next step was clear. Continue amplifying those voices around him. This was his moment, and he was ready. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment their reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now and don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.